Hi, this is Mike from BandLab, and in this video we're going to look at how you can compose your own music in BandLab using the included virtual instruments. You can open this project yourself with the link in the video description. And if you find this guide useful, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be the first to know when new videos drop. As well as offering many ready-made samples, BandLab allows you to make your own musical compositions using virtual instruments. These include realistic acoustic instrument sounds, plus electronic instruments and synthesized sounds. When you create a new project in BandLab, you'll be presented with a new track screen. Here you can choose to add various types of tracks. To create a virtual instrument track, I click the Instruments button. This creates a new instrument track that's set to the default instrument, grand piano. You can hear how this sounds by clicking on the virtual keyboard. You can also play the sound using your computer's keyboard. If you have a hardware MIDI controller hooked up, you could use that too. We've got a sound, so let's make a chord progression. First, we need a MIDI clip. To create one, I right-click on the instrument track and select Create Region. I then double-click this clip to bring up the Midi Editor. Here we can add notes by double-clicking. I double-click on C3, E3, and G3. This makes a C major chord. I press the spacebar or the play button to play the project back and hear how it sounds. I do the same again to stop playback. I return the playhead to the start of the project using Return or Enter, or by clicking the Go to Beginning button. Currently, our chord only lasts for a half a beat. Let's extend it out to a whole bar. To do this, I drag over the notes of the chord and drag the right-hand edges out to the start of bar 2. Let's hear how this sounds. I could create another chord by adding new notes, or I can duplicate what I've got already. To duplicate MIDI notes or clips in BandLab, select them, then hold Option on Mac or Alt on Windows, and drag them into a new position. I can transpose this chord into a different key by dragging it up or down. You can also use the up or down arrow keys, or use the +1 or -1 buttons. The +12 and -12 buttons transpose the selected MIDI up or down an entire octave. I'm going to move the chord so that the bottom note is on E3, which makes the chord an E major. Then I drag the middle note down a semitone, which makes the chord an E minor. I duplicate this chord and move it down to D3, which makes it a D minor. I then drag the middle note up 2 semitones, making it a D sus4. I'd like this chord to last for 2 bars. I could drag the note's ends out manually like before, but there's a useful shortcut in the form of the legato button. I select the chord and click the legato button. This tells BandLab to extend the notes until the same notes play again, or like in this case, until the end of the clip. To hear how these notes sound on repeat, I activate the cycle button or press C. I like how this sounds, and I'd like to hear how it sounds with the drum beat. To add a drum track, I click the Add Track button, and again select Instruments. This new instrument is again set to the grand piano sound, but I want a drum kit instead. To change the sound, I click the Instrument drop-down menu and set it to Drums, Drum Pads, 808 Kit. With the drum kit, rather than different notes, each key on the keyboard plays a different drum sound. Let's use these drum sounds to make a drum beat. I create a MIDI clip and move it to the start of the project so that it plays at the same time as the piano part. I add claps on the 3rd beat of the first 2 bars. I then put kicks on the 1st and 4th beat of the 1st bar, in between the 1st and 2nd beat of the 2nd bar. I then add closed hi-hats on 8th notes. I want this pattern to play for the whole 4-bar clip, so I duplicate it out, again holding Option on Mac or Alt on Windows. This is cool, but I'd like to hear how it sounds a bit faster. I changed the project tempo to 140 beats per minute by double-clicking on it and typing in a new value. I also set the project key to C major. This doesn't affect how it sounds, but it does tell collaborators what key the project is in. And if we were to add any musical loops from BandLab's sounds, they'd automatically be transposed to the correct key. Let's make the hi-hat part a little more interesting. I delete the hat on the 4th beat of the 2nd bar. You can delete notes with the delete button or by right-clicking them and selecting delete. I then set the view grid size to 1/32. This allows me to add 30-second notes. I use the zoom in button to take a closer look and fill in the gap with 30-second notes. This gives us a cool little hat roll. We can make it sound a touch more natural by selecting the 2nd and 4th notes and turning their velocity down a little to 81. The velocity value usually controls the volume level of a note, so this change emulates a drummer alternating between harder and softer hits. I like this little flourish, so I copied the notes and used them to replace the final hi-hat note at the end of the 4th bar. I then return the view grid size to Smart. Smart mode bases the grid size on how zoomed in you are. Next, I'd like to add a melody line, but before I do that, I'm going to label my existing tracks to help me keep track of what's going on. To rename a track, I double-click its name and enter a new name. I add a new instrument track, and I set this one to Keyboards, Synth Leads, G-Funk Sign. I'm going to play this part in live using my computer keyboard. I click the record button, then play along. When I'm done, I press the spacebar to stop. As you can see, my timing isn't perfect because the notes don't land exactly on the grid. If I want to tighten up my playing, I can select all notes by pressing Command+A on Mac or Control+A on Windows, then clicking the Quantize button. This moves all the notes to the nearest line on the grid. I can then go ahead and manually edit any notes that still aren't quite right. With the Snap to Grid icon active, any notes I move will automatically snap to the grid. You can turn this off by clicking it or pressing G. You'll notice that as we play the project back, it's starting to clip the master, indicated by the master meter turning red. This is generally to be avoided, so I'm going to turn each track's volume level down to -3 dB. At this point, I'm going to name the project and save it so that I can come back to it later. You can collaborate on your tracks with other BandLab users, and if you want to export your music to work in another piece of software, there are a couple ways to do it. Right-clicking on a MIDI clip and selecting Export Region gives me two options. I can export as MIDI or export as WAV. Exporting MIDI gives me a file that includes the note data that I can drag into an application to play back using a different instrument. Exporting a WAV will give me the audio data, which retains the sound of the audio but doesn't include the note data. You can fork this project and make your own version of it using the link in the video description. Have fun!